Hello and welcome to Trying Times. My name's Carmen. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I hope you're having a wonderful day, night, whenever you're listening to this. I hope it's wonderful and I hope you're doing so good. And yeah, if this is your first time here, then hi, I'm Carmen. We're basically best friends now. No pressure. But anyways, if you've been here before, thank you so much for returning and sharing your time with me. I really appreciate you being here and I appreciate you taking out time, your precious time from your day, wherever you may be, to share some time with me and sit. And I like to think of this as like a chat, but for chatting with me, for listening, whatever it may be, I appreciate you being here. This year has been pretty good so far, I can't lie. If I'm just getting right into it, it's now March. It's kind of crazy to think it's already March, and I don't know, it feels like the last 2 months have kind of flown by. And I'm very grateful for that because I feel like I'd rather things be going good and time be flying than things be going bad and time going really slow. I don't know if a lot of people would choose the latter there, but yeah, I just feel like it's been good so far. And it's been one of those things where I am also in the back of my head constantly thinking about my age. This year is going to be a big milestone birthday for me, the big 3-0, if you will. And I feel like all I've been thinking about lately is this whole concept of growing up. And I feel like growing up is honestly just one of those things that everyone goes through, of course, and we don't really talk about it a whole lot. So I kind of wanted to do that in today's episode or in this month's episode and just sit back and talk with you about growing up and what I've noticed so far, what I've felt so far, and just kind of how it happens. I don't know. I feel like to start, generally, it's almost like there's this quiet shift that happens. And I feel like it's where life becomes less about big milestones and more so about navigating expectations, disappointments, and all of the other unspoken changes that tend to come with adulthood. And in this episode specifically, like I said, I want to talk about the parts of growing up that we don't always acknowledge. So the confusion, the pressure, the unexpected joys, and honestly, the parts that can feel a little bit lonely, because I think that that's also a very big part of it. And when I say lonely, that doesn't mean lonely in the sense physically always. You can have a wonderful family, an amazing group of friends, an awesome partner, but ultimately what I'm talking about is this strange loneliness that sometimes comes up regardless of all of that. And you can't really escape it. Like, it just happens. It's there and you live through it. I want to kick this off with a little bit of a fun statistic or scientific fact here. So I did some research, and in my findings, I found that there's apparently this fact that people in their late 20s to early 30s experience what psychologists would call a quarter life reevaluation, which, hearing that upon the first time I heard it and was watching a video and then reading about it, makes a lot of sense. I'm going to be honest with you. But basically, it's essentially this period of adjusting to adult identity. So during this stage, in a scientific sense, if you will, the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is the part responsible for long-term planning and emotional regulation, is still finalizing its development. Which is why transitions during this time can feel a little extra overwhelming than they might at any other time, because it's like your brain's trying to transform and shift and enter this new era, but you're kind of stuck in what you've known. And it's hard to bridge the gap between the two, of course, because you're only doing as much as you can as a human, and your brain's really trying. I also noted that there were many studies that shared that adults often underreport emotional struggles during this phase because they believe they're supposed to have things figured out by now. And that is such a common theme, I think, across adulthood in a nutshell. It's a lot of people on a spectrum, really, of, hey, I have severe imposter syndrome, or, hey, I am so good. I have a 10-year plan here ready to go. I'm never going to feel confused. I'm never going to feel lost. I'll never feel overwhelmed. When in fact, it's actually normal to not have everything figured out. It's actually okay to have imposter syndrome, I think. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes, sure, of course, because you're a human. Why wouldn't you have that? And I think it's not the case for most people, I would say. Not at all the case for most people to have things figured out, because that is such a heavy pressure to put on yourself and such a high pedestal to hold yourself on. And while I think it's amazing to hold yourself on a high pedestal, I don't think that it's maybe the kindest thing to do to yourself, or maybe the most compassionate thing to think of, or maybe the most appropriate way to approach yourself, especially in a phase of growth and in a time of change. Because, yeah, naturally, if so much is changing within you, things might be changing around you too. And it's bound to feel conflicting, of course. I think I would almost compare some of my 20s to being similar to teenage years. And when I say that, I mean a lot of the shifts and the changes that happen around you, that happen within you, affects you deeply. And sometimes it's hard to cope with. Sometimes it's hard to deal with. And it just can feel like a lot, but you're not meant to know how to handle all of that all the time, because, I don't know, if we knew how to handle everything all the time and we were always prepared, I like to think of it as we would never learn anything, or there would never be anything for us to grow from, or anything to, I don't know, just take away some basic understanding or a complex understanding. Because I feel like the reason we run into roadblocks and discomfort, maybe internally, from our environment or from our situations or whatever else, is because you're meant to learn something from it and then go on from there. Do I always think of that in my own life? No, of course not. So I'm really preaching here. But I do think that's why this time and this period, sort of to speak, and this idea of underreporting emotional struggles is so wildly common, because we don't want to openly admit any defeat or openly admit anything is uncomfortable or we're not certain of something. Because, of course, why would you want to? It might make you feel a little bit less confident. It might make you come across a little bit less confident. It could make you really hone in on that imposter syndrome that you've been trying to hide. That's also another thing. So, yeah, I feel like this idea of underreporting emotional struggles is, while it's understandable, it does bum me out, I'm going to be honest, because I feel like we should be at a point where we can talk about things a little bit more and be able to know that others will be able to relate, and know that it's okay to not be certain. It's okay to not always be prepared. It's okay, really, to just go through the motions till you figure something out, especially in your 20s to 30s, that we experience this quarter life reevaluation. And then on top of that, just that additional layer of adults often underreport any emotional struggles. I don't know, the two go hand in hand, I think. And it's just interesting to think about. So, yeah, I feel like talking about the discomfort, or maybe sometimes the things that we don't say about growing up, those are definitely some big markers. Just maybe not wanting to share your emotional struggles all the time. And then also, in addition to that, not wanting to share that you're not certain, because that's scary. I will speak from some personal experience here. And I'll start this by saying there have been so many moments for me where I've felt caught between who I thought I'd be by now, me at 29, I guess, or me maybe a few years ago at 25, 26, and then feeling caught between who I thought I'd be then or now versus who I actually am. And I don't want that to sound depressing. I think we all experience that sometimes. And I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm exactly who I thought I'd be. If I think about like me as a kid, if I were to meet me as an adult, what would I want from that person? What would I expect from that person? I think in some of those instances, I am definitely who I thought I'd be. And on the other hand, I've had to go through so many ups and downs to really eliminate some of the other things that have allowed me to be here. So it's like that same thing I talked about a little bit ago of underreporting emotional struggles, or having that reevaluation and being like, really taking a moment to be like, what is serving me and what isn't serving me? And then if something's not serving me, but I'm genuinely learning something from this, what can I learn from it? Is that lesson done? Do I need to walk away from it? Is that something I'm still learning from? Am I struggling? Like asking yourself all these questions, I think that in part is how I've landed to where I am now. And just being like, okay, I think I'm actually pretty close to exactly who I thought I'd be, if not exactly who I thought I'd be when I think about what I would want to achieve as a kid, as a teenager, what have you. And that's exciting as a thought. I like to think of it that way, at least with adulthood, because I think when you try to emphasize that idea of like you as I don't know, a 7-year-old kid, or you as a 12-year-old preteen, and you try to imagine yourself as an adult. Obviously, that's not an easy thing to do. But if you try to imagine yourself as an adult and you're like, huh, this could be in a range of so many different things. It could be from your looks. How am I going to dress as an adult? Is it going to be representative of me? Am I going to have like fun, cool accessories? Do I like accessories? Is there something I particularly like? Do I like shoes? Maybe I have a huge collection of shoes. Is that something I lean into as an adult? And it doesn't just have to be appearance. It can be things that fulfill you internally too, like your hobbies. Okay, maybe as a kid, for instance, for me, I really loved art. Are there things that I love now that still connect to that? Sure, there are. There's actually quite a few different things that help me still connect to that and fulfill that side of my life, which is so cool. Is your work something that you're interested in? Is it something that you're passionate about? If it is, amazing. If it's not, are you fulfilling those areas of your life in other ways? I think looking at it that way helps. And I'll say that in addition to some days growing up can feel very empowering. And it can feel like you're finally understanding yourself. And then other days, speaking for me, it can feel like I missed out on a memo that everybody else received. And that's not a bad thing. I think it just means sometimes things can feel off. You might not feel your greatest. And in addition to that, I think comparison can hit very hard at this age too. And no one likes to mention that, but it's very true. Everybody's achieving different things on their own timeline, and it's not a race by any means. And that is such a healthy thing to remember, but it is also still so normal and so human to look around you and be like, huh, my life would be different if maybe I was doing that, or maybe if I was in this position, yeah, my life would be really different. And it kind of distracts you sometimes. And I feel like the human brain just likes to do that because it's meant to scan and look around and look for things. So, yeah, naturally, we are comparing or, you know, scanning all the time, I'd like to say. Scanning more than comparing. We're always looking around us and seeing what's going on. And I think that that's so interesting because, like I said, we're all at different points in our lives and it's kind of great. And I think it's also the first time that we experience this. And when I say it's the first time we experience this, I mean it in the sense of like in school, we're all at the same pace. We might be in slightly different grades, but we're all doing the same thing. You're going to school, you're going, to do whatever you got to do to finish your work there. And then you go home and maybe you just have a chill afternoon. Maybe you're going to play a sport. Maybe you're going to meet up with your friends, or you're going to read, or you're going to do something that you enjoy. We all follow this very similar pattern for such a long time. And then once you're out of school, everybody's sort of on this different path. Like, surely there are some similarities, there's some commonalities along the way. But I find it interesting that for the first time ever, we're all kind of in our own world. And it's empowering and it's exciting. But I think that also at the same time, that's where comparison creeps in because it's like, well, this person's doing this and this person's doing this. What am I doing? And that's not a bad thing, but also it's important to not let that dictate everything you do or to control everything you do because no one has to be on the same path at the same time ever. It's not necessary for function. It's not something you have to do, but it is something I think a lot of the time that we tell ourselves should be the case. Or, hey, I want to do this. This person's doing something similar. Oh my God, look at everything they've done. Why haven't I done that? Because it's just not your time. Maybe there's certain things blocking that right now for you. And maybe that's for a good reason. I don't know. There's surely some kind of a reason there. What that may be, it's just not the time. And the one thing I really want to emphasize here so heavily is that I think the hardest part of growing up and being an adult is realizing that no one really knows what they're doing. And that's a part of the process. It feels like a giant game of imposter syndrome. It feels like Among Us, if you will. Maybe not Among Us, but I don't know. I feel like there isn't really one particular moment for that sentiment where this is like realized or confirmed, where you're kind of like, oh, everybody's just, kind of here doing this thing. And like, does everybody know what they're doing? And I just don't know what I'm doing. Or like, maybe nobody knows what they're doing. It's not something that's like confirmed or something that you realize all the time. It's something that I think in adulthood, you just see fragments of every now and then. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe this person's learning the same thing I'm learning about. Or maybe this person who I thought was like doing X, Y, and Z is actually just figuring it out. And through the process of figuring it out, they ended up making something work. And does that mean it's going to work for me? No, but that means it worked for them. And that's pretty cool. Maybe that could be encouraging for you to try something you've wanted to try and feel like less scared about it. I don't know. I think it's really interesting to think of things that way and to remind yourself that growing up isn't linear by any means. It's not. And it really is not glamorous. It's not fabulous. It's not fun like a chunk of the time. It can be sometimes, but not all the time. And I think learning to accept that has some sort of like a grounding property to it. It feels very grounding, at least for me. It feels nice to know, okay, this isn't meant to be easy. This isn't meant to be a straight upward line or path. This isn't meant to be amazing all the time. You're just meant to be. And then that's how things happen. That's how you learn. That's how you are present and mindful. And I think that's really nice when it comes to learning how to be an adult and being in your adulthood and understanding yourself a little bit better. Okay, I will finish this episode up because I've talked so much. Not with a voice prompt. I will say though, usually at this point of every episode, I like to include some audience participation or share a submission from a friend. If you didn't know, there's actually a participation form that you can fill out for Trying Times. And if you want to do that, you can check out the Instagram at the Trying Times podcast and click the link in bio. And then you'll see that form right there or the link to that form right there. And basically you'll get a bunch of prompts in there that you can answer either by sharing a voice recording or a video or text, whatever you want to do. And then I can share that in a future episode, which would be really fun. So I think you should go do that. Moving along. For this episode, I really just want to focus on looking at some stuff on Reddit, which I feel like I talk about Reddit a lot. I do love going on there. So I found some cool stuff. And I specifically came across a post where someone wrote, "Growing up is realizing your parents were just people trying their best, and now you're doing the same." And I found that to be very, very comforting. And also a little bit of a boost because it's true. Parents are genuinely just people that are trying their best. And I think a lot of the time we tend to forget that as youngins, if you will. They're just trying their best and they don't always have all the tools or all the resources and they don't always know what to do, but they're just trying their best. And that's all that matters. And now, essentially, again, regardless of whether you're a parent or not, you're doing the same. You're just trying your best and you're trying to figure it out. And that's all that matters. So long as you're trying, I think that's what matters the most. And it's special. I think under that post, I saw some other people sharing comments in a nutshell that shared how adulthood constantly feels like juggling responsibilities you never fully feel prepared for, or trying to understand things that you maybe don't understand that well, all while also trying to hold the parts of yourself that you don't want to fully lose. Because as you're growing, sometimes you do lose parts of yourself, and that just happens over time. It's kind of like a snake shedding skin in a way. And I just feel like it's a nice reminder, at least for me, seeing all those comments and seeing the discourse in this thread on Reddit, that everyone is figuring it out in real time, even if it looks very much put together and wrapped up in a pretty bow from the outside. So yeah, I'll leave you with that sentiment. I feel like that's a really nice place to leave this episode. And it's just a good reminder that even if you don't feel the greatest, you're still trying, and that's all that matters. Because if you weren't doing that, then I don't know, but at least you know you're trying. At least you're trying to do something, whether that's leaving your comfort zone, whether that's learning about something, whether that's growing in any way. You're trying, and that's so special. So yeah, thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. I really hope to chat with you soon. And if you want to chat about anything, especially related to this episode, please feel free to go over to the Trying Times podcast and send me a DM on Instagram. I would love to chat with you and hope to hear from you soon. But yeah, for now, I'll leave it at that. And we will chat again soon, okay? Bye.